Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conscious Conversations. Conscious Conversations is a podcast and global community of self healers, cycle breakers, and new earth leaders. Here we empower you to have uncomfortable conversations and show you deep healing through communication. As we collectively bring awareness to our own triggers, habits, traumas, and soul's inner wisdom. Today, I am so excited to share with you guys. I recently came back from Dave Asprey's biohacking conference and I met amazing exhibitors and speakers. And we have a special guest today, Sarah Turner, who holds a postgraduate degree in clinical neuroscience from Roehampton University in London and has earned a BSc degree in psychological sciences and nutritional medicine from Westminster University. She completed her diploma in photobiomodulation from Montpellier University, where she will participate in the neurology module for the upcoming academic year, which I'm so excited to hear more about, Sarah. And she's also the CEO and the co-founder of a neurotech company called CeraThrive and the co-host of Rebel Scientist podcast. She's a researcher, an amazing human being. I'm so excited to have you here, Sarah, and drop into this amazing conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that intro. Thank you.
My pleasure. So to begin, I'd love to tell us a little bit about what is CeraThrive? How did you start the company? What inspired it all?
Sure. So, yes, for the last few years, I've been putting my heart and soul into this company, CeraThrive. And really, it came out of my experiences when I moved to California and got involved in the whole biohacking movement. So it was cool. We connected at the Asprey show. But really, it's focusing on light therapy, so red and near infrared light. And as you mentioned in that intro, my background is neuroscience. So I'm focusing really on a brain wellness application, but also gut, because the gut is so intrinsically linked to the brain. And I expect we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, so it's really, I've started a red light company, red and infrared light, photobiomodulation for a gut brain application. But my background was more going from pharmaceuticals in my early career to alternative and going very alternative, going what I almost call extreme woo, right down the other end. Consciousness studies. I did a lot of stuff with consciousness interface devices, a lot of stuff which is considered very fringe, I would say. And now I'm moving back to that kind of middle ground, because photobiomodulation, although light is still fairly esoteric, there is now a lot of very hard science building up around it. So for me, I found my happy place in between somewhat technically some still very fringe and interesting ideas and stuff where you can go off on one about consciousness, but also I have my feet now firmly in a more science academic world, which is nice to be able to straddle those kind of two spheres.
Yeah, the best of both worlds and
That's
merging
right.
of them both. I'm curious also, did you ever experience any sort of gut microbiome imbalances or health issues that led you to create CeraThrive?
Um, to be honest, I have had IBS for most of my adult life, but it's something that I ignored and pushed to the side because I do a lot of studying. I've done a lot of psychology. I know a lot about stress. I've put myself in some very stressful situations. And so I just considered it something that I had to deal with as part of just going through life and maybe putting myself in those environments. So it's not really something that pushed me to start this device. Actually, I was more interested in the brain health angle. And like I say, I studied clinical neuroscience. I've always been very fascinated by the brain and by the mind and by psychology. And also I did a 23andMe when I was making a movie. I made a biohacking movie called Supercharged. People can see it on Amazon if they like. But in the course of making that movie, I found out that I have double APOE4, which is a genetic propensity for Alzheimer's disease in particular. So I already had an interest in the brain. I had already done my first degree in psychology. I've already studied a lot. And then I was pushed into more thinking about how can we do preventative medicine for a brain health application by getting probably that news about my own genetic profile. And it wasn't till later that I made the connection with the IBS that actually, since I've been doing a lot of self-experimentation, that's totally gone. And I totally put that down to the red light, actually, and maybe some of the practices of integrating more natural light into my life. But my diet was very good before. I have a nutrition degree as well. I had a health food shop. So I think the thing that really shifted the needle for me was the light therapy. And although it wasn't really the focus for me starting that company, my focus was really about how can we have a better brain? Because everyone's talking about longevity, but to me, that's a horror if you've got neurodegeneration or if your brain isn't working. Longevity is only a good thing if you've got a good, healthy brain. None of us want to live longer, I think, in that kind of state. We want to live longer only if we live happy, healthy, productive lives. So I think that was my main impetus rather than the gut stuff. Although now the more I'm making these discoveries and getting feedback, the more the gut is becoming important to what I'm doing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it ties right into our nervous system, the gut health, the brain health, the heart health. That all together is what longevity is to me. And I love that you mention how we want to live a quality of life, because that's really what I think it's all about. It's not necessarily about how long we can live, it's really the quality of life that we have. So when we wake up when we're 70, that we have vitality, we have energy, and we're able to participate and do the things that we want to do, travel and etc. So yeah, going into now the gut brain connection, can you explain the gut brain connection and why it is crucial for overall health and well-being?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is something that is becoming a bit of a buzzword now. It's becoming more popular as more data starts to mount up about the importance of gut health and in particular microbiome health on just our general health and well-being, but particularly on how our brains are functioning. So from a kind of a developmental point of view, our guts develop before our brains. Even from an evolutionary biology point of view, the gut as an organ developed before the brain. It's our interface with our environment. And really, it's the place where we assess the food we're eating, we assess the light. It's the place where we house our flora and fauna of our microbiome, which again, hugely important in our overall health. And our guts and brains are connected in various ways. Obviously, they're connected via the blood, but they're also connected via the vagus nerve.
Mm.
And they're also connected internally by that kind of that link that we have, that psychological link that we have. So there are more pathways going from our gut to our brain than the other way around, because it's our gut that's telling our brain what's going on out there in the world, and then the brain is making decisions and passing that back down to the gut. So some people call the gut the second brain. It's probably the
Hmm.
first brain, and then the
Yes.
brain in our head is the second brain, because really we're sensing our environment from our guts first, and then we're acting on that information using our brain in our head. The gut brain connection, hugely important. The microbiome is like 3 pounds. It's of stuff that isn't us present, that's in our gut, that's also making a lot of these decisions, producing hormones, sending their own messages. Like I said before, I was involved in some fairly out there research, things like biophotons, like the way that actually our cells are emitting light as well as receiving light. The bacteria are doing that too. So there's a
Hmm.
huge amount of communication going on between our guts and our brains, some of which we know about, some of which we're still trying to work out. But for sure, the gut brain connection is linked now to a number of neurodevelopmental diseases, particularly there's a very strong connection in Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, also autistic spectrum disorder. I saw a lot of information coming out recently about addictive personality disorder and how we
Mm.
have certain gut microbiome profiles that kind of link to each of these different disorders. So we're beginning to see the importance actually of what's going on in our gut for all kinds of chronic ill health conditions, not just those ones that are being talked about widely, like Parkinson's.
Yeah, yeah. And 90% of the serotonin is stored in the gut. So it controls our mood and quite literally our quality of life. And that's really fascinating that you mentioned about the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's too, because both of my grandparents, my grandma had Parkinson's and then my grandpa had early case of dementia. So I definitely just know the feeling of having somebody that you love so dearly, so close to you, go through these health issues and or illnesses and diseases. And that's why we're even having this conversation. And it's like having this awareness and bringing this awareness to these conversations so that people can have the resources to heal.
For sure. And if someone has a gut issue now, that's your body giving you that early warning, actually, that
Yes.
you need to do something about these chronic health conditions. Because most of these conditions, the symptoms start off in the gut. I don't know anybody who doesn't have some kind of IBS or some kind of leaky gut or something going on. I went on holiday recently with a bunch of girls, and we all opened up our suitcases, and we've got like coconut milk and powders and all kinds of things in there because people are struggling. There's a lot of people who say, oh God, yeah, I can't eat this, I can't do that, I have to wait for the bathroom. So I think we're getting these early indicators that there's something
Mhm.
going on with our body, and it's our gut where we usually get that information first. So paying attention to that and healing the gut now is hopefully going to put us in a good stead where we don't have to go through those chronic conditions later on.
100%. And there's a really great book that I'm going to link below in the show notes. It's called Gut Feelings by Dr. Will Cole, all about the gut microbiome. And I really love how he weaves in the different aspects of it because most people think that gut health is just like the food that we eat, I feel like, but a lot of it actually has to do with like our stress, our environment, our emotions, all of those things from like a holistic perspective and lens. And I love also that you mentioned the Supercharged Amazon movie that you created on biohacking. Love it. Would love to check that out. And I'm also going to link that down below so you guys can check that out in case you're interested. And now moving into the conversation of light, because you mentioned how that's really what inspired your journey. Can you explain how does red light therapy work from a science perspective and like a neuroscience perspective? And then also what is its primary benefits of the body? And also how can somebody know that this is something that they would potentially need to optimize their health?
Sure. So yeah, photobiomodulation, which is really just the big word for any kind of therapy where you're utilizing light. And it encompasses red light therapy, but also photobiomodulation has all the different spectrums of light from UV up to near infrared. So when we're talking about red light therapy, we're really just talking about the wavelengths of visible red, and then just past invisible red, we have infrared, which is not visible to the naked eye, but it sits there on the spectrum close to red, and it has different functions in the body as far as we know. Now, we would usually be exposed to near infrared naturally at sunrise and sunset, just
Hmm.
because of the angle of the sun, because these are longer wavelengths of light in comparison to the rest of the visible spectrum. So you can think of your rainbow of the wavelengths getting progressively longer. So UV has a very short wavelength, and then blue has short wavelength, and then as you go up, I'm not sure how you do it in America. In England, we say Richard of York gave battle in vain, and then you have your colours going up. But it's a little but it basically the colors are really just ways that us humans have described the differences in the wavelength. So as you
Hmm.
get to red, it's a longer wavelength of light, and so as the sun comes up over the horizon, then the rest of the light is scattered or filtered out, and we get these long wavelengths of light. Now, as humans, we have evolved with that for a very long time, probably like 200,000 years. We've evolved being exposed to these long wavelengths of light at sunrise and sunset. It's something that we hardly do now because really for the last 200 years only, out of that huge span of human evolution, we lead indoor lives now. So the upshot is we are red light deficient. And I think of it really just like any other deficiency. We can be vitamin C deficient, we can be B12 deficient, we can also be long wave light deficient. And I think everybody who is living a Western lifestyle, who lives in a house or a flat, or who isn't sleeping barefoot on the ground and waking up with sunrise every day, is deficient in these wavelengths of light. So really, we all need it. We all need some form of red light therapy, and we all need to be outside a little more if possible.
Hmm.
So the body is hugely transparent to these particular wavelengths. And actually, when we're exposed to these wavelengths of light, we set off a whole cascade of biological reactions that is in tune with us being a diurnal mammal. We are a mammal. We're meant to be outside during the day. Our bodies are activated into certain behaviors with certain light frequencies. We respond. And then we're meant to, as a diurnal mammal, when the sun goes down, get tired, go to bed. That's basically our programming. The more we go against that programming, the more problems that we tend to have. So I see red light therapy as a way to get us a little bit more in tune with that and to put back some of those frequencies that we're missing. From a biological point of view, I can get very technical about mitochondria because as that's another thing that we do as scientists, get extremely granular about different mechanisms. So we do
Please
know
do. We're here for
we
it. Please do.
we do know the main way that light works is in the mitochondria, which is where we have the respiratory chain, which is how we normally produce ATP. So people may remember this electron transfer train from their schooling. Maybe you don't, but it's just a way that we pass electrons down a certain chain in order to produce an energy molecule called ATP. Each of these proteins or enzymes in the electron transport chain have their own function, and it seems like light is received by just one of these proteins. It's called cytochrome C oxidase. So now we're deep onto the mitochondria matrix. We're zooming in on the different enzymes that have this effect on energy. And this one particular enzyme, cytochrome C oxidase, is where we receive light. And that becomes excited when we expose it to light. Because it becomes excited, it becomes more effective and we get a production of ATP, which is one of the big benefits of red light therapy, is that you have more energy, because the more ATP you have in the body, the more energy that you have. In addition, we have this reactive oxygen species, which is signaling molecules, which are also produced. And that is telling your cellular DNA it's time to heal. Because at sunrise and sunset, that's really the body's natural healing time. That's when we start to produce hormones. That's when we know we can heal. It's a bit of a downtime before the busyness of the day, or it's a downtime at the end of the day. That's when our body wants to do those kinds of things. So I think that what the red light is really doing when you're activating that pathway, you're telling your cellular DNA it's time to heal. So not only do you have more energy in the body because you have this ATP that's been released, you also have the cellular DNA giving the body the signal, okay, let's go, let's instigate all of these healing mechanisms. And that's things like downplaying inflammation. That's things like starting up cell growth, stem cells, neurogenesis, all of these things that the body would usually do to heal. And that's why with red light therapy, the main effect that we have seen so far is things like wound healing, pain relief, reduced inflammation, because you're giving back the body those long waves of light. The body starts to initiate its own repair mechanisms in effect. And I think you're saying, yes, we want the granular. I think we're in science, we are a little bit locked into this reductionist model where we focus on one thing, but the body never does anything in isolation. So there's probably a lot of things going on that we probably are not even aware of, and that there's not been a ton of money invested into doing the research in this kind of technology as yet. So anything that's got a certain aromatic structure is going to resonate with light. So there's probably a lot of other things going on in the periphery at different scales of the body. We know now that from quantum physics that the body is operating on the scale of the very small as well as the macro scale that we're monitoring. So I would suspect that also we're getting a lot of things going on beneath the surface in response to red light therapy. The way that I became really interested in light is because I was at Jerry Pollack's lab, which is the guy who wrote the book Fourth Phase of Water. And this was for the movie. We were having a chat about how light structures water. And again, this got me thinking, because the brain is water, the body is water. Almost every protein that you have in the body is hydrated, in that it's surrounded by water. So if you shine light onto a surface and you can potentially change the charge on the water molecule, that has huge implications for biology too, and especially the brain. The brain is mainly water. And so I think, as well as cytochrome C oxidase and this ATP, I think probably structured water is having an effect. And this is really interesting when you think about neurodegeneration, which is caused by misfolded proteins, and proteins tend to fold depending on the charge, which is dependent on the kind of the quality of the water that they have surrounding them. So there's the known mechanism, which is this cytochrome C oxidase. And then there are also some other people looking at different mechanisms that could potentially be having this effect with red light therapy, including structured water. That means that the body is just a lot more effective when it's exposed to red and near infrared, and it's in a healing mode. So that's why I think really the effects of red light therapy are so ubiquitous. It's not that it's a panacea, it's just you're activating the body's healing mechanisms and giving the body energy. And when you do that, you can heal almost anything, because really the body has its own way of dealing with stress, with disease, with trauma. but it can only do that if it has the energy and if it has the signal that there is enough energy and that it's time to do. So red light therapy to me is just such a wonderful therapy because you're not cajoling the body like you might be doing with a pharmaceutical where you're targeting a specific receptor. What you're doing is you're giving the body the energy and the information it needs, and then the body does the work itself.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And healing on a cellular level. That's red light therapy. And I love red light therapy. I discovered red light therapy actually back in 2021 when I lived in Colorado. I worked at this place called Restore Hyper Wellness, and they had those panels. And then I've noticed over the last few years, it's just become such another like health trend. Like it's a very, everyone's talking about red light therapy and cold plunging and
That's right.
biohacking, all of the things. And so I'm curious to know the science. Can you explain the science behind how, because what, if you guys check out CeraThrive's website, it's a headband, red light therapy headband, and then also like a, how would you describe it, as a pouch? Would you describe it as that? Or
Panel, yeah, a
a
small,
panel?
yeah, it's a panel. So it's a panel, but I think the question you're going to ask is what is the difference with the freestanding panels, right?
Yes.
Which
Like, why would somebody not go to get a red light therapy at a wellness place with the panel versus having this at home? And what are the differences in terms of the science behind that?
Yeah, I also have got panels because I think they're great and they're good.
Yeah.
And I have a brilliant one where it also has UV. So I am into the panels, but I think it just depends on what you're trying to do, the application of these different technologies. If you
Mm,
think about light is like an arrow, light will only go in a straight line. And if you want to know the dose of light you're getting, you need to contour your delivery device to the body because you need all the light to be lined up to fit around your curves. If you're standing in front of a panel and you can see yourself lit up red, that's because the light is bouncing off you. Because light will do that. It's almost like firing marbles. These photons of light, discrete packets of light, it's almost like little arrows. And if your body isn't at the right angle for the light to penetrate, it's just going to bounce off. So for a lot of the freestanding panels, or if you're standing at a distance, you're definitely not going to get the full dose of light that's coming out of that unit. And in fact, a lot of that light is going to be lost with scatter and with the light just bouncing all over the place. So from the point of view of what I'm trying to do, I want to make sure that I can deliver a dose of light. It's like medicine. If you want to give 15 milliliters of something, you have to measure it and take it on a spoon. You can't just go, oh, just chuck it and hope that you get the right dose. So from my point of view, having this kind of panel that definitely contours to the body and having it set for a certain time, in this case 10 minutes, you can know that you're getting a full dose of light and you're much more likely to get the light deeper into the body. And if you're doing it around a joint or something, you mean I'm doing it around the abdomen. But if I, like the other day, I did something silly. I did squats with terrible form, obviously. And I damaged my knee. I couldn't walk up and down stairs for a couple of days. So I used the light panel on my knee. And then you're getting the convergent beam because you're able to get like where the light crosses potentially inside your body, you're getting a more concentrated delivery of light. So I like the panels. But I think if you want to get a really good dose of light or if you want to target a certain area, you need to have something that contours. So that's why I made this. It's just neoprene, but it's not high tech, but it just allows you to shape the light to meet the body. And you can see that this has got a battery on it, so you don't have to be sitting next to a wall plug to do it. And you're not getting any kind of EMFs from the electricity. So from my point of view, they're the things that are slightly different from a panel to a specifically targeted flexible device. You get higher
mhm.
dose, you get better penetration, and potentially you're getting a convergent beam when you're shining it on an area where you can get round like a joint.
Hmm. Yeah, and I love that it concentrates those areas, specifically the gut and the brain, which is what this entire episode is on. And when I tried it at the biohacking conference, like I felt the warmth in my stomach. It felt amazing. And I just dozed off for 10 minutes in the chair. And in regards to just different ways that the red light therapy can positively impact mental health, because our gut with the serotonin and everything in terms of anxiety and depression and stress, is there a way that the device can positively impact mental health in that way, do you think?
I think so, and I hope so, because that's a lot of the programs I've built around that. A lot of the research is coming out of the States. There's a fabulous guy called Dr. Paolo Casano, and he's actually got a research institute at MIT, Harvard or MIT, I'll check it out, but at one of the very big prestigious universities in the States, where he's looking at things like bipolar, but also things like mood disorders, things like cognitive impairment with Down syndrome. He's doing a lot of different things which are mainly related to a psychiatric application, and he's showing great results. Now, with the headband that I've got, my idea is also that you can pulse the light, because you can imagine that you can have the light that goes onto the surface of the brain and has all those effects that we spoke about, maybe changing the water, maybe changing how the energy, the ATP is produced. But you can also modulate that light in a certain way that potentially influences brainwaves. For example, if you're paying attention to something, your brain is oscillating at a certain frequency. Maybe it's oscillating at a gamma frequency, which is a 40 hertz frequency. Now, if you're not doing that, if you're struggling to focus, we can maybe entrain the brain to do that by switching the lights on and off, or pulsing the light at that gamma frequency. So inside my headband, as well as you're targeting the microbiome, so you're changing your mood from a gut point of view, you can also modulate the light coming out of the headband in order to either bring the brain up to a higher oscillation state, or if someone's hyper stressed, maybe you want to bring them down. So we can do that by pulsing the light in the headband, as well as targeting the gut and the brain at the same time. So actually it's quite sophisticated in what you can do with just light and just being able to pulse it on and off the head. But I think a lot of the mood stuff does come from having a healthy gut, actually. I've done a lot of the brain stuff. It's fascinating. I've done a lot of the pulsing. I've done people who've got some amazing results when they pulse at either alpha or gamma, which is 10 or 40 hertz. But actually, for long-lasting mood, I think it comes from healing the gut, because
Mm-hmm.
the gut microbiome, they're producing a lot of metabolites which are eventually going to your brain and having an effect on mood. So a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time where we think we're in a bad mood, it could just be we have a bad gut flora. And I think that certainly doesn't help. And of course, we also know things like sleep. If you're sleeping bad, that has a really detrimental effect on mood. And one of the main things about red light therapy is it gives your body the energy to sleep better. So I think there's a lot of things going on there where using red light helps with mood. And like I say, the studies are there for various psychiatric conditions. That's not something that I can talk about. I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not saying I've done the research, but certainly the research is building up for various psychiatric applications, as well as just general mood and stress and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's portable. It's someone's daily dose. I love that you mentioned daily dose.
Yes.
And for the ones that are listening that maybe don't know exactly what a gamma frequency is, can you explain what is a gamma frequency?
Yeah, sure. It's the brain is oscillating at different kind of speeds, let's say, at different times of the day. And that's a little bit of a kind of sweeping statement, because the brain is doing all kinds of things. Again, there's probably oscillations within oscillations happening in the brain. But broadly, if you were to measure the pulsed frequency that's coming from your head, and you can do this with an EEG, you will see that when you're asleep, you're in a certain brain oscillation. When you're daydreaming, you're in what's called a theta oscillation. When you're awake and are paying attention, it's gamma. It's just another word for a 40 hertz. Your brain is oscillating at 40 times a second. So there's a lot of studies now, especially for things like Alzheimer's, where people haven't got their memories going, that it's probably because their brain is not quite reaching that oscillation. So you're not able to attend to things. So you're forgetting things, because what you don't pay attention to, your brain isn't laying down the memories. So now there's a lot of research where people are using things like a gamma frequency, which is just another name for 40 hertz, 40 times a second pulsing, to help people with those conditions with memory and focus and concentration. So really what we're talking about is we can maybe entrain these brain waves just by showing the body, like we're showing the body, okay, we're pulsing the light here at 40 hertz, and the brain starts to slowly mirror that frequency. So that's the idea behind some of this brain entrainment or neuromodulation. And we can do that with light, we can do it with sound. There's various ways that we can do it with magnetic fields. There's different ways that you can entrain the brain up to those different frequencies, but light is a very gentle and easy way to do it. And it's just a case of having the light going on and off. And because the light's not going in through your eyes, it's not like a flicker effect. Because I know there's a lot of talk in the industry about flicker, which is if you were to see a light maybe in an old schoolroom or one of those big halls where they still have those big old fluorescent strip lights, they may be oscillating at a frequency which is you're seeing through your eyes, and so the brain doesn't like that. It becomes irritating. But if you shine straight through the forehead, you're not getting that effect through the eyes, and you're able to very gently entrain those brain waves.
Wow, so fascinating just how much technology, like wellness technology, is advancing. I
Yes.
love it. I love it so much. And is it better for someone to do CeraThrive at night or in the morning? And then what is the difference in terms of benefits if they were to do it in the morning or versus night?
Yeah, because we're not going through the eyes, it it's not something that's really going to interfere too much with the circadian biology, because the way that we tell whether it's night or day is that we have very specific light sensitive cells in our eyes. So because we're not using that, we're going straight through the forehead and through the gut, you can use it really at any time of day. And it's not going to really affect your circadian biology if you use it after sunset, for example. I tend to do it in the morning because then I know I've done my session. So I get up, I do my panels, do my vitamins, do my headband, do my body pad. But sometimes I might do it at night, especially if I've gone out and I've eaten something that maybe didn't disagree with me, or there's a reason why it's sometimes I would sit and do it in the evening. So it really doesn't matter. And I think it just needs to fit into someone's schedule, because more important than the time of day is consistency. So it's more important that you do it. It doesn't have to be every day, but 3 or 4 times a week, than worry too much about the timing. Maybe more data will come out to show there is a certain time. And when we do know the body has certain rhythms, but at the moment, there isn't any data that I've found that to suggest that any time of day is better than any other. I just don't advocate looking at really bright lights for a long time after sunset. But
So
apart from
interesting.
that, yeah, apart from that, I think it is red and near infrared. You shouldn't interfere with your biology too much if you use it in the right way.
Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like bio individual for everyone. I've been to a lot of wellness events in LA, and then they would be at like 6 p.m. And in the evening they would have like cold plunge and red light. And
Right.
that really relaxed me before
Yeah.
bed. But then also in the mornings, if I'm like, when you sometimes wake up, you're like having a hard time opening your eyes. We're human, right? Everyone experiences that at least once
Yes.
in their life. And and so then I have this like little mini panel
Yep.
and I'll put it right up to my face and it just wow, it like wakes you up and it's really powerful. And this like the saying of we cannot see you or you have to see the unseen because
Yes.
things are happening on a cellular level that we simply cannot see. And there is so much research and data, clinical trials, and everything that is out there that is continuing to advance where this research is coming out and more we have this information in the studies to really understand how this science works. I'm curious also for beginners, right? Let's say somebody listening, they're like, I have no idea even where to start. I haven't even tried red light therapy. What advice do you offer for beginners on getting started?
Yeah. There are a lot of gyms and wellness centers now that have the panels and that you can go and try. Most of them have that. And then there are also, if you just want to get like panels, there are quite a lot of good companies that do offer just those, like you say, just those little ones that you can have on your desk where you can just try it. Definitely, if you're just starting out with anything to do with like the first thing to do is just get outside in the morning with sunrise if you can and put your feet on the ground and kind of experience what it's like to be in that light. But then really there's not that much to it. It depends what you're trying to do. If you really are focusing on brain or gut or any of those things, something like this system is going to be good because then you're getting the right dose. If you're looking for something more holistic, a good friend of mine has got an energy lounger, which is a bed you can lay on. Quite a few centers have those where you can just get in them. They're almost like tanning beds, or my friend has one, which is like a spa lounger. So they're also good ways to do it. But I think it's just a case of working out what you want to do. If I know very good friends who you probably saw at the biohacking conference who have a sports device like Lumaflex. That's something if you're into sport and you want to have something where you can wrap around joints for pain. So I think first things first is what are you trying to achieve? If it's general wellness, maybe a panel's good. If you're looking to do something with your brain and your gut, get something like CeraThrive because it's made for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to experience it, there's lots of these biohacking and wellness places now where you can at least get that experience and feel it. Because I think once you felt it, that's something your body intuitively knows it's something good for you. We know it with animal. I just did a little call with a lady who's making blankets for dogs and cats and horses. And she said
Mm-hmm.
they'll come and lay on it because we intuitively know that these wavelengths are good for us. So I think if you haven't tried it, the best thing to do is just go somewhere and experience it and then decide what your goal is and get something that's appropriate for that goal and do it consistently. Really give it a good try for a few months because it's almost like exercise in the way it works, as in it's a low level stress to the body that your body reacts to. So if you're using this gut panel, for example, the body knows, okay, light's coming, the mitochondria need to receive it. I'll make more mitochondria. And then next time you'll make more mitochondria until in the end you build up this way of dealing with light. And that's how your body gets stronger. So I think go out somewhere and try it. And at the same time, get a device and use it consistently for a good 6 weeks to really feel the benefit. And then once people have felt that, then they tend to progress on and use more of these advanced techs because it's just so easy and useful and non-invasive. And there's not really any side effects from doing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, try it out. CeraThrive.
Yeah.
Are you guys actually in any wellness places around the United States or even in like London or England? Like wellness
Not
spas?
Not yet, but that is my next phase. So really, I'm just in the kind of startup phase. So it's taken a little bit longer than I thought to actually get to production. There was a few bumps along the road. So I'm only, in fact, today getting my main first batch delivered to the warehouse in Miami.
That's where I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're somewhere near Little Haiti. So you're more than welcome to pop in. I will be there soon. We have an office there. We have a lot of different light technologies there. We're going to have a base for red light therapy there. For all of these other products that I mentioned, we also share a space there. So we have a little wellness center there. But getting into other places is my next port of call. I was recently at the Biohackers in Finland, so they'll be stocking CeraThrive. Yeah, there's lots of places where we're going to have resellers so people have the opportunity. Here in London, we have Superhuman, which is a biohacking center. I'll be visiting there soon. So I do expect it to be more widely available. And I think it's something that people can try red light therapy in the clinic and then they can go home with a unit like CeraThrive so they can keep up what they're doing with the therapy. Because quite a lot of people have it now as just a therapy that's integrated in their general wellness regime.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to slowly wrap things up, I'd love to hear what is your long-term vision for Sarah Thrive, particularly in advancing the understanding and the application of red light therapy for the gut and brain connection and health.
Thank you. Yeah, my long-term vision is to make it more accessible for people. And to do that, I will have to get a medical device classification.
Mm,
So that is something that I will be working on at the same time as still keeping my focus on wellness and optimization. So I have a few things going on at the same time. I'm very focused on wellness and optimization and kind of people taking a bit of sovereignty and self-responsibility for what they're doing. And I'm hoping that this is a tool for that. In addition, because I have a background in research, I will be starting with that process that needs to happen in order for it to satisfy regulatory bodies like the FDA and the TGA and over here the Medical Device Directive. So I will have two arms going. I will be doing IBS, probably as the first health application, and then maybe looking at one of the neurodegenerative disorders. But at the same, my focus is very much on wellness because I think if we can get people in this position where they know that they have different options and that they can start now to do these very simple things to increase their wellness, I think that's going to put people in a much better position in the years going on when we're talking about longevity, let's say, because it would be lovely to be able to give people a tool where they can actually feel like they can age, but age healthily. because to me, that is a horror story to have people aging and have 50 more years where they're suffering. Not cool. So for me, providing a wellness solution for that is important. And then I also am very interested in the whole consciousness piece. How can we raise consciousness of people? How can we get people to make better decisions? How can we get people to be more self-aware? And I think there is a place for some of this technology in that field. And so that is also something else that I do on the sidelines, is look to see, okay, how can we integrate this more into consciousness studies, or how can we make it more something that enables people to maybe experience altered states of consciousness more, or maybe even just make better choices, maybe a little bit more aware. Because I think if your body's healthy and your brain's functioning, potentially we've got a lot more chance of people getting to those kinds of states. And we all need that right now in this kind of crazy world where we really don't know where things are going to be in a few weeks, let alone in a few years. I think it's something where we need to prepare people and we really need people to be being their best selves and making the best choices, because I think we're all going to be faced with some pretty tough decisions down the pipe.
Yeah, I love the industry that we're in because really what it is, we're in preventative medicine, which is prevention to me, I believe is the cure, which is what I hear you saying. And really also the optimization aspect of things too, hand in hand with longevity and then shifting consumer behavior. I'm so deeply passionate about that. I'm such an advocate for people to do their own research, that we vote with our dollar, and really questioning, where am I investing my money? And am I making these investments into my health and into
Yeah.
myself, into my business, into my community,
Mhm.
and really supporting businesses and companies, whether they're small or bigger companies, that are living in integrity and alignment with putting people before profit. Profit is great, but really it comes down to heart-led. I care about the people, I care about the planet, and that, I believe, is what is going to set businesses apart in the wellness industry now until the next 20 years. We are creating a new earth, a new planet for the future generations to exist and thrive in, based on how it is that we are investing our money, our time, and our attention and energy. So, that being said, thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on and having this lovely conscious conversation and diving into all the intricacies of the gut and the brain. And I really feel like you and I share a lot of similar just passions and love for this industry and this work. So I'm really grateful that you're able to come on, and I'm excited to get a CeraThrive device myself and share more about it.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you, really. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out the show notes below, where I will link all of Sarah's information and all of the resources that we discussed in this episode. And if you found this episode helpful or valuable, then please feel free to share with your friends, with your family, leave a review, and share your feedback. I read all of your comments and I love hearing from all of you. So thank you all, and I will see you in the next episode.